Hi, I'm Steve Robbins. When you're trying to understand business, the thing is that businesses all pretty much work the same, right? Whether we're talking about a globe spanning giant multinational or whether we're talking about a one person company, what you need to do is understand the financial constraints that allow the company, or hopefully allow the company, to be able to bring in money with a product or service that people are willing to pay for at the right level such that it can cover its own costs and then also have money left over to fund growth or to return to the shareholders or to do whatever they wish to do. That extra money, the money that's left over, that's called profit. And contrary to popular belief, profit is not necessarily money that is taken home. That's also the money that's available to reinvest in the business if the business wants to grow and expand and do new things. So today we're going to zoom in and take a look at a teeny tiny business, a one person business, in fact, a man named Evan Northrup, who is a magician. He is a friend of mine, and I went to one of his magic shows. He's a very good magician. And we got to talking about the economics of running a magic business. And so in this presentation, we're going to be talking about the economics of running a magic business. And again, think of this as a microcosm of whatever business you're in. If you are in a giant world-spanning business, this is the same kinds of conversations that you want to have to understand the basics of your company. Now, each piece of this, if you're a world-spanning corporation, is going to be much, 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 much more complicated and harder to get the numbers. But seek to understand how all of this fits together in a one-person company, and then you'll be able to start to ask the right questions to understand much larger companies. During the second half of the video, we talk about how does a magician even distinguish themselves? What is it about a particular performer or a particular business that makes it different from the other competitors in the marketplace so that he can stand out? Because people are going to buy the things they remember, which means there's got to be a reason they remember you or your brand or your clothes or the records that you put out or the glasses that you manufacture or the paper products or whatever it is that you happen to do. So please enjoy a conversation with Evan Northrup, magician. All right, so I am here today with Evan. I'm not sure what you want your last name to be.
That's an excellent question. My full name is Evan Northrup Busso-Jarnis, but Evan Busso-Jarnis was not working as a stage name, so I just went with my middle name, Evan Northrup.
All right, so I'm here with Evan Northrup, and
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about magic, the business. All right, Evan. So you wrote me, and we were talking. There were a couple of things that came up. Yeah, email marketing,
Mm,
and then also things like discounting and pricing and stuff like that.
yes.
Are there any other things you want to talk about?
A few things that have been kind of jumping around in my head. Uh, Newsletter and sort of people management, audience management of some sort, because of the style of show that I'm doing. I would love there to be a recurring audience, and kind of keeping in touch with them would be important, and extrapolating out from that, networking in general, not so much like pulling people in, but just how to work with that network of people I'm building through the show, that audience I'm building through the show.
Got it. Okay. Nurturing.
Nurturing.
Yes, that's the word that the internet marketers use. Is you need to nurture your audience.
Oh, the jargon. Nurturing. I like
Oh,
that.
everyone has jargon. That's how they become experts, which is how they can justify the high fees. Is
So
it's all about jargon. Um, okay, well let's why don't we start then with the pricing question, because I think that's going to be is sort of the more mechanistic of the two
okay.
things. Because what we had been talking about was I had said to you, "Oh, your show is too expensive for my friends who are students,"
Mhm.
and you responded, "Yeah, well, I have X number of seats in the house. That's all that I have. It costs me a certain amount of money, and it doesn't matter if it's too expensive for them. I kind of can't afford to have them here. So how do we think about that?"
Uh, and so this is a huge issue, both for me and in kind of the local Boston theater scene, is pricing of theater, and a huge portion of it comes down to the cost of space. And I hate how much tickets cost in Boston for anything, for any kind of live performance. They shoot up so very quickly, and I would love to find a way to break out of that, to make live performance more affordable, at least for what I'm doing, because you just cut out such a huge audience of people who would really love to see something different and participate and would bring a whole new flavor to it. That yeah, I would love to dive into this a little bit.
Cool. So, tell me about the economics of your show. I've been to it. It's in a relatively small room.
Mhm.
Um, how many people does it fit?
Capacity is 35, and that's everyone. So I sort of have to take myself, people helping out with the show, cameramen involved in that. So it tends to be between 30 and 35, let's say.
Okay. Let's go with 30, just because that's a conservative estimate. So
Mhm.
you have a capacity of 30. And how much do you rent the room for?
All told, for more than just the space, it's 700 for the night, but that covers the use of the space for the amount of time I need to set show and 2 shows and strike. And it covers some of the tech in the space, a bit of the lighting setup, a board to control a piece of it, and cinema filming, videography for the event.
All right. So basically, then, if so, you have 30 paying people
Mhm.
involved, and that's your maximum.
Correct.
And your costs are 700, which means I think that comes out to about 23 a person. Yep.
The cost for the space, not for the show, because the show is changing each time.
Ah, okay. How much does it cost you to develop a show?
That is such a good question. I'm early on in this process, so there's this hazy area with artists where our fee and sort of the amount to pay ourselves comes at the end, if it comes at all. Uh, so, of the first 2 shows and going into the third, best best estimate or estimate range to put on a show like this is somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200.
And that's for the development, or that also includes the space thing?
That includes everything, apart from sort of paying me my ideal $2 million per show.
Right. Well, that comes later.
Exactly.
Okay. So then the all-in amount, including the space and the tech,
Hmm.
is about $1,200.
I think that's a pretty accurate guess.
But that doesn't include the amount needed to pay you.
Correct.
Now, this is a thing that many business people do. I did this for about 15 years before I ran into an accountant who pounded me over the head with a foam rubber bataka bat, um, which is that we view our income as being what's left over after we pay the expenses.
Mm.
And if what you want to do is create a sustainable business that is going to give you a particular lifestyle for however many years, you want to treat it as if you're paying yourself whatever the fixed salary is that you intend this to generate for yourself. So you want to divide so after expenses, you want to divide whatever is left over into wages, which you kind of get, which you always credit yourself. Like you'll always take this off of you're not going to report it this way on your taxes, but when you are looking at a show to determine if the show is profitable, you have to deduct your time, both your development time, your prep time, and your actual working time, whatever. And then there is I'll just call it the excess profit, which is the amount over and above that. That's the part that's just kind of the free take-home pay. After you've gotten your salary, it's like, look, I made $1,000 over what I needed to pay myself, so now I can pay myself. And then you can either choose to also pay yourself $1,000, or you can reinvest that in the business and have that cover costs of development of a future show.
Yep.
So, how give us a rough idea of how much it costs you to live, or how much you would want as a salary if this were a full-time gig.
Yeah. I went through a wonderful arts workshop last year through which we had to break down all of our expenses and kind of our cost of living. I can survive on about $1,100 a month, and that I know.
How do you do that?
We are very fortunate to live in the place that we live. The living situation with our landlords, sharing a very small space with my wife and I, our cost of living space wise in Boston is pretty minimal.
Okay.
So that is a much lower cost than most people have to grapple with, and I am very happy for that. Fortunate to have that as the situation. A fair portion of my debt is paid off from school and such. Although I'm still taking that into account and paying it off very slowly over time. And we just live very simply. So it's not like that 1,000, 1,100 per month is cutting out absolutely all but the bare necessities. More comfortable would be in the giving myself like the 13, 14, not just for extra going out, but to be starting to save or to be chipping away a little bit more at the debt I have, those sorts of things.
All right,
So if I could, living expenses very comfortably, 1,500 would be a real comfy spot for me to be living in where I am right now.
Okay, so let's go with 1,500. So if every show, and we'll get into some of the complexities later. Like right now, you're in this weird mode where you're developing an entirely new show every month. Once you're a going concern, you presumably won't be doing that. Presumably you will have a show developed that you will then perform, or someone can choose one of the 5 amazing Evan shows or whatever, but a lot of the development costs are going to not be involved with that.
Yeah.
At the same time, it doesn't sound like the development, you said if the development plus the space was $1,200, if 700 of that was the space and the tech, that means the development is costing you about 500.
Yep. Which are we including wages in development and prep, or is that a separate category?
Does it take your time?
It does. Oh, absolutely.
If you were doing this for someone else, would you be charging them?
It would be rolled into a single cost. I rarely get, yeah.
Then that's part of your wages.
Okay. Then to give you an idea of how the show gets designed over the course of the month, I probably spend about 20 hours a week developing the show. And over the course of 3 or 4 weeks, depending on how the month falls, that'll be 80-ish hours worth of show development. The props get made for each new show, and then there are kind of environmental or experiential elements that I am starting to incorporate, but that I would like to incorporate much more. Food and drink elements, participatory activities, extra little bits that aren't necessarily magic, but round out the entire experience that do end up being a cost to produce somehow. So I think that 1,200 does a pretty good job of taking into account space, tech, wages for the other people, meaning cinematography, lighting, other folks I have helping me out. It doesn't take into account whatever I would like to get paid on top of it for wages.
Right. So let's pretend for a moment, and we were talking before I turned the recording on, that you do other income other than just these shows. You do shows at weddings and things like that. But let's talk just about, you want to be in the business of doing the Evan Northrup show, not bar mitzvahs. Although bar mitzvahs are wonderful, but the Evan Northrup show is even better. So if you were getting your full income from this, you'd be paying yourself a wage of $1,500 a month.
Yep.
So if development in space is $1,200, your wages are $1,500. That means you need to be making $2,700 a month, which is shockingly low.
I mean, we can aim higher, don't get me wrong.
Right.
This is, and I think the reason this particular show, why I'm ending up with numbers kind of slightly lower here, is the purpose of this show has never really been for it to be the sole moneymaker and the one way I make a living. I've always set out to gain from this show experience, which is rough when other people tell you can get paid in it. But for a magician, as a single person kind of running a business, as I'm sure you know, all these allied skills of managing ticketing software, learning enough of vector programs to be able to cover things that are random expenses that I could be doing myself, learning about video editing, learning social media, managing my
it's absurd. Yeah.
all
It's a
that
huge
stuff.
number.
And I've never really been in a situation, or my workflow has never required me to get good at those things. The gig lifestyle that you were mentioning, you can dive into those, but a lot of that is not really necessary in the same kind of way as developing a show audience,
Yep.
or a following of some sort. So I'm, at least for the first, the inception of this show, the outset of the show, I would love. I had planned this as almost a write-off, that if I can break even for a while and make a little something out of it while learning these things and kind of setting myself up with the knowledge that I need to develop a standing show, that's where that's worth the effort for me.
Yes. For purposes of this discussion, however, let's look at what would it take for you to make a full-time living
Perfect.
at this. And the reason I'm going there is at some point you're going to have to do this calculation anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking $1,200 of development expenses and then $1,500 of wages for you, that's $2,700 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the moment, you're doing, since we're just talking about this show, you're doing 2 shows a month.
On the same night.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
So that 2 shows a month, that means for each one of those shows, you need to make $1,350 to cover your whole nut.
Mm-hmm.
And that covers the production cost for that show and then the wage for you for that month.
Correct.
All right. So $1,350 a month, and your capacity is 30 people. So that means $45 a piece. Now, what the $45 number represents, that is, you can always feel free to go below that, but below that, you're making a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And above that, you're making profit.
Yep.
Things like creating student pricing, and if you lower the tickets for students, since you have a fixed size house, there's no way to get more than 30 seats in the house.
Yep.
And this is also the problem with theater, right? Is you have fixed production costs every night in theater, but you have a maximum number of seats, and you simply have to cover all your costs with those seats. And you can't always assume that the seats are 100% full.
Right.
Because maybe they're only going to be 80% full. And if on average they're 80% full, then that $45 becomes 45 divided by 0.8. That's $56.25. Mm-hmm. So at 80% occupancy, just in order to cover your costs, and your costs include your wage, because at the end of the day, you're doing this, you want to do this to make a living, at least in the scenario that we're considering.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. So that gives you a cost of $56.25. If you wanted to produce a bunch of student tickets at $20, you would either have to be willing to take the loss, which, might be worth it as an investment, as a marketing expense.
Right.
Which, by the way, is how I would actually record it in the bookkeeping, is you're taking a loss for the specific purpose of doing marketing promotions. If you don't want to take a loss and you still want to pay yourself a wage, etc., then the only other place for that to come out of is the other ticket prices. So for every 20, so if your break-even ticket price is $56.25, and you want to give a bunch of $20 tickets away, that means some other people are going to have to be paying around $85.
Right.
So that is unfortunately just kind of the base economics. Now, if you were spreading this instead of across 30 seats, across 100 seats, mm-hmm. that would change.
Yep.
If you were doing 3 shows instead of 2 shows, that would change. But so the basic fundamental dollar thing here, you have completely convinced me, because I thought your ticket prices were high, and I was thinking, oh, can't you just offer $20 tickets to students? Now that we've walked through the math, the answer is, well, you can, but then you're going to have to live with your parents, which
again,
yeah. Once isn't, well, twice isn't, 3, 5. Enough.
You only have a magician in your house for so many years. I understand that.
Yes. So, okay. So those are your basic economics. And as a small business person, there are 2 things that I would suggest to you. So thing number 1 is netting out your salary as an expense. Pretend you're paying yourself your salary, even if you can't afford it based on the amount of money you're coming in, for the purposes of looking to see, is your business profitable? Is this making sense? because at the end of the day, you're going to need that 18 or the $1,500 a month to live on, whether you get it from this show or not. So, and so that is a real expense. And this is one of the things I've noticed about business is that, and this applies to self-employed business as well as corporate business, is that business is the only, people in business are the only asset that a business has where you have the option of not paying at the full price, because the full cost of the asset, because since people negotiate their own salary, if people are bad negotiators or they don't actually know their finances, or they just have no power in the situation and have no choice, people can accept less than they need to live on. And again, that's as true in self-employment as it is in working for someone else. And the problem with that is that, at least in our culture, we're not willing to let people starve to death. We say part of why we live in a culture is so that we can all take care of each other, and we want to have some sort of social safety net.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is that even if you're not paying yourself that full salary, you still need to think that eventually your business needs to be able to cover that salary. So you need to structure all the rest of your business around making sure that salary is a real expense. And I mean, by real expense, I mean making sure that salary is genuinely something that the business can cover on an ongoing basis.
Right.
So when you think about your own business and when you think about booking something somewhere under these kinds of economics, what you want to think about is the least amount that I can charge to have this be a viable business is $56.25. Now, depending upon the gig or the venue or whatever, that number may change, but you want to calculate that number and make your decision about taking gigs. And at this stage of where you are, because you are just establishing a reputation, there's plenty of stuff you might want to do to connect with new audiences or to be put in front of, event planners or whatever. I mean, there's a number of reasons that you might go less than that. But in terms of you thinking about how to allocate your own time, that is probably the baseline you should use for this is how much I need to make per audience member, or else this gig is not a good use of time. And I have to be able to evaluate it. So in my case, I'm not a magician, but one of the things I do is I do a lot of writing. And I have people come to me and they say, oh, would you like to write a blog post for free for our blog? Which I consider to be the most heinous request ever.
But you'll get so much exposure.
Exactly. I just found out yesterday there's a cryptocurrency called exposure. So when someone says we can pay you an exposure, I can be great. Here's my wallet account. Just zip over 453 million exposure bucks, which comes out to about $100. And
that's so good. It's an artist that created that.
Oh yeah, it's a brilliant idea. But so what I think about, what I think is okay, it takes me, I know my writing speed at this point. I write 400 final draft words an hour. So I might do a first draft way faster than that, but to get to the point where something is final draft quality, it takes about 400 words an hour. And I value my writing time at, X $100. If somebody wants me to write for their blog and they say it's going to be good exposure, one of my first questions is, okay, my podcast already has 6-figure exposure, in terms of audience size. My website gets close to 50,000 hits a month. So those are kind of baselines for me. Without doing anything different, I can already get that level of exposure. Yeah. So if somebody comes and says to me, we want you to write this free blog post, we'll pay you an exposure. My question then becomes, how many people are we talking about here? Because if it will actually get me in front of, say, 1 million people, that's interesting to me. Yeah. Because, that even at a low conversion rate, there may be a few people who end up signing up for my Get It Done groups or something like that. But if it's only going to get me in front of 10,000 people, then I want to know, who are the 10,000? Are they members of my target market? Are they influencers? Are they people who I can make a material case that this is worth the number of hours it's going to take me, and to get to that quality level, and the precedent of doing work for free, because at some point when you do things for free or at a discount, people come to expect that. And I want to be a premium product, not a bargain basement product. So those are all some of the considerations that you want to have for this.
That's great.
For the purposes of your monthly shows, where where there are a number of different purposes. For again, for our listeners, they don't know the background, but Evan is doing 12 completely new shows of all original magic every month, one a month for the next 12 months. And you're doing this. This was a challenge to yourself to
Yeah,
actually.
I ended up injuring myself last year. I got married in September, did a month-long run of a show in October, and then like a couple days after fell, tore the cartilage in my arm, went in for shoulder surgery after that, and was out of commission for such a long time that pipeline had dried up. Everything was very slow. It was grinding to a halt and tough to build it back up. And this was a project in a slightly different form that I'd had in the back of my head for a while, and it seemed as good a time as any to jump into it, because I knew it would be so much work. That the real reason I hadn't gotten into it up to that point was because I knew I didn't have the time to commit to it with so many projects overlapping already. So I had the space and just decided to go for it and see what happened with it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, so it would be, so part of the reason that it would be cool to be able to get students in is because there are lots and lots of colleges in Boston, and colleges are places that could pay you a pretty decent fee to come in for a much larger audience than you're going to be able to arrange the facilities for on your own, and they could be a decent moneymaker.
Yeah.
So if in fact that's part of what you want to do, there's a couple ways to think about it. One is discount tickets. Two is you're going to pay that out of your salary, because at the moment the $1,500 we were talking about is kind of a phantom 1,500. We're putting it in there for accounting reasons, but in terms of promotion, you could pay for student tickets out of that. You can also, of course, limit the number of student tickets. You can just say, I reserve 10% of every show, which is 3 people. I thought it was 35 for a second, which is 3.5 people, and the 0.5 is really interesting. But I reserve 10% of my show. You can saw someone in half.
At the front with a saw. I was just thinking that. Like, so is this a left half or right side of your brain that's coming in to see this one? You get to choose now.
Exactly. And be careful. He is a magician, and magicians do that with real saws. So in that case, if you reserve 10% of your house, you have to do this ticket calculation for the rest of the house if you want to preserve the original salary number.
Right.
But that's a way that you can have a little bit of promotion without it being this potentially unlimited drain. Like, oh my God, what if I sell 100 student tickets? Right. I mean, this is what shows do, because when the front 2 rows are reserved for press and media, and then they're always empty because the press and media just get tired of going, and you're like, wait a minute, I paid good money to be here. These people have a chance to see it for free, and their seats are empty. Which is why everyone should get a really realistic looking press pass. I'm just saying. Cool. So other than walking through the math like that, I'm not so sure I have a lot of smart things to say about it, because the thing about business, if you're making something a business as opposed to a hobby, is I won't say numbers don't lie, because numbers can lie all the time, but the mathematical constraints are the mathematical constraints.
Right.
If you need X dollars to live, and you have a capacity of 30, and you're doing 2 shows a month, you do the division, and that's the amount of money you have to make. And
that's great. This has been really helpful to sort of pinpoint the kind of the linchpin areas where here are the numbers as they exist, and these are the ones that can be tweaked. And then it just becomes a balancing act of like a big logic puzzle of, well, if I do this, what are the implications down on this criteria or whatever the element is.
What if you could do 3 shows, which I get you can't really in one evening, but you could say, okay, what if I did 2 days of 2 shows? Well, that would double the fixed cost, but your salary would now be spread across both days, which would lower the ticket price that you needed to make ultimately, et cetera. So you can play around with them and just see.
Absolutely. And that has been actually a consideration. We've been thinking about trying a Saturday show so that we can spread them out a little bit more. Right now we're doing them all on Fridays, which means kind of have to deal with the after work time slots. But if we open it up to Saturdays when people have the time, We could do an earlier, like a pre-dinner type show so that people can go out to dinner after, a regular show and a late show sort of thing.
Yep. You could do a matinee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bring the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Bring the kids. We'll have balloons they can pop.
It's the kid area.
So, shall we shift over to talk about marketing?
That'd be great.
And email marketing. Cool. So I have no idea what you're doing, where you are on this. I am hardly an email marketing expert. I do it. I've taken a bunch of classes in it. I've read about it, but I am not myself somebody who sits there looking at the number of Facebook page conversions and contrasting it against the number of Twitter and upping my ad spend. Like I'm not that guy. I know about all that stuff, but I don't have direct experience with it.
So I think maybe a more helpful way of approaching the email marketing topic is to do it more generally as a nurturing conversation, so that I can lay out a little bit of who my audience is, because I'm learning that. That's one of the goals of this project, is figuring out who my core target audience demographic, whatever you want to call them, is, and figuring out what I can give to them that is a little different from what other magicians in the area or other live performances in the area might provide. Yep. I would say, if I had to make generalizations about magicians, the pathway, the kind of one route to success that is touted very often, is you get your show down, as it were, whether it's your 45, 60, 75-minute show, and it is the same kind of show that travels with you as your gig performance, that gets changed around every now and then as things slowly get added or taken away. It can be customized a little bit, but for the most part, it's the same show. And even performers who are mounting their own theatrical style show, I would say the majority tend to be based on their gig show. Right. That is, I think it's a wonderfully valid way to make a career, and the real benefit to a show like that is you're seeing something that has been tried and tested 100,000 different times. And I have shows that are getting there, that have been the same show for years and years, that continue to grow and evolve rather than be creatively pushed forward. This project exists more in the theatrical world, in the world of theater, more than the world of magic, I think, because rather than finding my one approach, my one set of tricks, and honing that over years and years, what I'm trying to push with this project is my creation of material and exploration of the process of how a magic show is created and what it can be. So that involves obviously playing with the material and trying different new material, things that have all been created by me, some things that are kind of drastic, sharp left turns from classic effects, whatever it may be, and then playing with the format of a magic show and trying things that might be more site-specific and moving the location around, or immersive or interactive in different ways, or promenade style where people are moving through different locations. And that, I think, is a characteristic, playing with the format, that appeals more to the theatrical community, probably more so than the traditional magic audience.
So you'll be the Sleep No More of magic.
Exactly. And I say that never having seen Sleep No More, which I realize is an affront to said theatrical community. But I'd love to see that someday. But yeah, there's so much interesting stuff happening in the theatrical world in terms of format. It's just been so established, the kind of traditional proscenium style theater, and it's such a big community that there's so many individuals and theater companies trying new stuff. And there's some of that in the magic world, but not so much. And I would love to jumpstart that a little bit and identify that, the community of people who would like to be along for that ride.
Sure. Wow, that's interesting, because you talked earlier also about nurturing your audience and having an audience that carries along with you. Mm-hmm. And, part of that, when you said that, I was thinking, well, how many times are the same person going to want to go see the same magician? I mean, maybe once every X number of years when you come back around, but it's like once every X number of years. It's not like I'm going to go 3 times a year. except if what you're doing is theatrical and you're changing it around a lot and it's really interesting, maybe that is something that the same person is going to want to see multiple times. Like that seems to me like it's almost a cross between, I hate the word influencer, except that's what I'm thinking, but this is a cross between, you're not just getting people to come see the magic show, you're getting them to come be to come bond with Evan Northrup.
Yeah.
Right. Um, it's come be part of my world, and my world changes. My world is interesting and it is theatrical, and and you're coming for the experience that I'm going to share with you and make real for you. You're not just coming to see, the XYZ show, which has been performed 500 times in Las Vegas and is very, very, very good, and is the XYZ show.
Right. That is a really wonderful, wonderful way to think of it. The come be part of my world, and I want to write down that extra clause, and my world changes. I want to, there are several magic shows in this area, standing magic shows around here and in New York and wherever you go. And there are people that go back to them. One, because they just really, really click with that particular show or that particular style of performer. And a slightly larger group of people that go back, I think, to bring friends and family and kind of watch them respond, which is an interesting phenomenon in the magic world that I doubt exists in theater in the same, at least in the same proportions. But this idea of trying to build a world, like a theatrical, magical world, and inviting people into that really appeals to me.
So I'm going to even heckle that and interrupt you and take it further, although I probably should be quiet and just let you ride it for a second. So I have now seen you a total of 3 times. The 2 shows that were part of the series you're doing right now, but also the show that you did that was a test before you did your tour. Was that like a year and a half ago?
Yep.
Right. And there is one thing that absolutely jumps out, and jumps out more in the first 2 shows. So the show before last year and the first of this year's series, and it was a little bit less in the second of this year's series. The thing that jumped out so much was you. It was, hey, here's this goofy Evan guy who clearly loves everything about what he's doing, really wants to share it with us, and like, we want to be part of that, because it's like you're like a puppy dog, and we were like, oh, we want to scratch him behind the ears. But I cannot overstate how appealing that is, because in some ways it's the opposite of theatrical. Right? Because theatrical always has this element of, here I am playing a character, and you were playing you. And even in the most recent one, your delivery was more polished. Your delivery seemed less like, you didn't stumble as much and things like that. And interestingly, there is some value to the stumbling if it's sincere and authentic. But in all 3 cases, so this was also the case for the last one, all 3 of those shows, you did as, let me invite you into my world. Here are the books I read as a kid. This is the basket that we kept the books in. I mean, I remember that. How many times am I going to remember a patter like that from a show? But in your case, I'm assuming you were telling the truth. So it came across as if you were telling the truth. But the idea of come into Evan's world, and it is a place of magic. That's actually even kind of a good
That's going on the rack cards. That's going on. It's exactly that idea. It's right. An environment of magic. It's kind of
right. And the reason that I connect all this with the idea of influencers and influencer marketing is because the reason that people will sit and watch some stupid 14-year-old babble on about nothing for hours of YouTube video is because of the person's personality, right? It is the feeling of, I know this person. I am part of this person's community. I hadn't even been aware of this entire phenomenon until I stumbled on a video of this guy named Danny Gonzalez, who has a YouTube channel with a couple million visitors. So, he just did some live tour, and I did some calculations. He's not going broke doing this. I'll just put it that way. But he basically, all he does, his whole shtick is he just critiques other YouTube channels. But he does it with so much personality, and like he's just sort of goofy and funny that you're just like, ooh, like the critique is in the same way that lobster is a vehicle for the butter sauce, the critique is a vehicle for interacting with Danny, not the other way around. He is not channeling the deep information. The deep information is an excuse to hang out with Danny. The magic and Evan's world coming to the show is an excuse to hang out. Could be. I mean, this is one position. You could choose a very different direction, but just, from the 3 times I've seen you, I'm going to generalize and say you have that way more than certainly any other magician I've seen.
Thank you.
Right? Like you're just, what you see is what you get. Here I am. I'm Evan. I'm doing my thing. I love this, and I want to share it with you. And not share in the Facebook sense where you're going to see it whether you want to or not. Share in the sense of like, hey, I have a magic world. Come join me in it for an hour.
Yeah.
And I think that if that's the style of presence you want to have, and your world changes, and if that's the style of presence you want to have, and that's the relationship that you want to build with your audience, I actually think that's much more doable in an email type way than just advertising regular shows. Now, it's also more work because you have to show up as a presence in people's lives to some degree.
Yep.
I'm thinking, you're familiar with the band Fish?
Very much so.
Right. So you're kind of the fish of magic.
It's very funny you say that, because part of this idea of trying a new show each month, and that putting me in a position where it couldn't all be scripted, it couldn't be the theatrical world I'm used to where every moment is planned out, came out of seeing a couple Fish shows and just watching how they move together and which parts are made up, and that you rarely see that in magic in a way that reaches kind of such successful technical achievement. There are also failures for sure, right. But the risk of failure and the interesting high moments are what appealed to me out of all that.
Yes. So think about them, right? Because they built their following without the traditional marketing. They broke all of the rules of how bands get big, et cetera, et cetera. But yet they have people who, they know Fish, they know who the singers are, they show up, they know the songs. It's in the case of what you just mentioned about, like, sometimes a trick doesn't work. If we like you, it's fine that the trick doesn't work, because the trick is just is an excuse to spend time with you. And so as long as you recover in a way that keeps us there with you, it's now, you want some of the tricks to work because it's going to be or you make it a comedy show. But could you hang on 1 second? I have an incoming call. Okay, so we were just turning you into the fish of magic.
Yes.
Which, so if I can just riff here for a second, because we talked about email and email marketing. So I do email marketing, which consists of keeping an email list and then sending out email to that list on a regular basis. Although I don't actually send it out on a regular basis, this is going to be, the video of this is going to probably be the first thing I've sent out in months. But at some point, who knows, maybe I'll send stuff out on a regular basis. You do want to send things out often enough to people that they remember who you are. There are multiple schools of thought. There is a school of thought that says you want to contact people every single day. And then there's a school of thought that says you want to you don't want to overload them. You want to contact them, at a wider interval. The impression that I get is that the every single day thing is for brief spurts of activity where you're trying to sell a particular thing. Like, on this day, I'm going to be having this workshop. And so, every other day leading up to it, I'm going to send you something about it. they seem to divide the world up into multiple types of emails. There's actual sales emails, which are usually done as a campaign where it's like, okay, I'm doing a show on the 30th. I'm going to do 5 emails that start on the 15th. One at one, then 4 days later, then 3 days later, and then one, and the next day. And these are actually designed. These are sales emails. They want to get people to come to this particular show. They have a click here to purchase your ticket link. And these emails, marketing software can let you rig it up so that if somebody has clicked on the purchase link now, and in fact, if you're really sophisticated, you can even, I believe there are usually, not usually, but there are sometimes ways to hook it up so only in the event of a final purchase does this get triggered. But at the very least, you can almost, with all of these systems, you can set it up so if they click on the I want to make a purchase link, it will then take them off of getting follow-up messages so that they're not going to keep getting the urging once they've clicked it. You can also do things like, depending on how sophisticated you want to do and depending on which system you're using, you can even do things like, okay, if they click that link and then didn't actually purchase, now send them this other stream of letters that says, hey, I noticed that you were interested in this, but you didn't actually purchase. Why not? Here's 3 different reasons. Click the reason that applies to you, and then it will take them to a web page that will specifically say, oh, well, if cost was your concern, let me offer you a 10% off coupon or whatever. Then there's also nurture emails. And nurture emails, the intent is not to get them to purchase something right now, although you might still have purchase links or things. The intent of a nurture email is to do something to strengthen the relationship between you. And this is where are you forming a relationship with Evan, or are you on a mailing list to find out when a particular performance is happening? Yep. So this is where the forming a relationship with Evan piece would come in. Now, there is a program that I am in the middle of. It is long, and it is a long and not particularly interesting story as to why I have signed up for this. But I am in the middle of getting a free program called Autoresponder Madness. And autoresponders, those are just emails that go out at a regular time. And this is a guy who has made millions of dollars with autoresponder based campaigns. So, and he has a very precise way that he sets these up. You set it up once, you never have to do it again. And anyone who comes to your website, there's a big button that says get to know Evan. You click that button, enter your email address, and then you get this series of emails. And the reason that I bring up Autoresponder Madness, there's a couple of reasons. One is I think I may have an affiliate code that I can give you, which could get you a discount on it. But it's because it's a really simple format that I think lends itself much more to relationship building than the more salesy formats. Mm-hmm. The idea in Autoresponder Madness is that you are forming a relationship on an ongoing basis, and you're providing value to people, and you're doing it in the form of stories. And since what we're talking about here is getting to know Evan, stories about your life. Now you still have to tie this to some type of actual information or some whatever, but if I would imagine that people who go to magic shows are interested maybe a little bit in magic. So maybe you could teach a magic principle or show how some trick that is okay to talk about. I'm assuming that there are some tricks that, kind of in the biz, it's okay to tell people how they're done, so you could share some things, and who knows, even like, tie it to current events somehow. This is really a function of your creativity. But the idea is that you do campaigns that are stories, and the story is done in chapters. You send out a chapter a day, and it could be, here's how I got into magic. And now, this is going to take a little bit of skill on your part in terms of writing. I have no idea how you are as a story writer or teller, other than, in the context of a show. Right. But what you might want to do is tell a story about, here's how I got into magic. And then, find a way to say, and here's how this could apply to you. So, here was the thing where I got exposed to something I had never done before through this random thing, because I was, walking down the street and thought that I turned a street light on with my mind or something. I mean, something that simultaneously gives us a look into your world, but then you turn it back to us so that we feel like we're getting something out of this other than just reading about you, unless you're entertaining enough as a writer, in which case maybe we just want to read the story. But I think if you provide actual value for people, if they walk away going, wow, I'm learning something, or I'm having a really good time, or whatever, as I'm getting to know Evan through this series of emails, that's the kind of thing that will get people really interested, because then you start dropping the shows into this. You say, wow, I had this idea about Once Upon a Time. Or, so I'll tell you, if I were in your position, knowing as little as I do about you, at every show, the last two shows, you've had people put ideas for themes in a bucket. You're only going to use one of those themes for the next show, but the other themes could all be emails you send out.
Yeah.
And it could be, these are themes that people thought, let me explore this theme verbally for you. And, let's talk about, the, the magic of, the magic of the theater, or the magic of ballet. And here's why this would or wouldn't work as a show, or like, I don't know. I don't know where you would take it.
No, this is great. I love finding those ways of overlap. I think once I start making those connections, or once other people start making them for me, the process, kind of the greater strategy rather than the individual tactics, become a little more approachable, a little more clear. It's the big strategy that I have a hard time with, because the business side is not my background, is not my world. So I think seeing those connections helps to build up the framework to a point where I can make extrapolations about the strategy.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, I found the letter here. I'm going to send you some information about this Autoresponder Madness course. And he's currently creating version 4 of it, and he's giving version 2 away for free.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do version 2, and he even says right in the introduction, he's like, here's version 2 for free, because you're going to want to do this. You're going to want to pay for version 4 once that's ready.
And so it is you asked kind of where I was in this world. I am, let's say, beginner as a gentle term. It is a program. It is similar to something like, it's a constant contact-y type thing. It's a
Right. Okay. So no, Autoresponder Madness is a strategy course. It tells you, if you are using a constant contact type thing, here is what you do with it to be able to build a strong relationship with your customers.
Okay. Great.
So do you have a constant contact type thing?
No. I have kept my 50 to 100 email addresses of people that support me regularly just in Outlook, and have used that as a means of sending out my 2 emails per year. I have, only because I fell into it, I have some experience with MailChimp, but I have no sort of loyalty to any particular method of reaching out to people or software for helping to manage those messages, because of my lack of understanding of the greater strategy. I don't know how to choose among them.
Got it. Okay. Well, so hang on one second. I'm looking up something. But as I look this up, one of the things I do want to say is, if you're going to be doing this as an actual marketing effort and not just let me send stuff out to a bunch of friends, even though it is certainly possible to do it as like a big giant BCC list in Outlook, that very quickly becomes infeasible for a number of reasons.
I'm feeling that.
Not the least of which is that there are actually laws and regulations about using email for marketing purposes.
Okay.
Now, as far as I'm aware, no one has ever been prosecuted for breaking them. So, do what you will with that information. However, that said, the advantage to using something like a constant contact is that, number one, they make sure that you're whitelisted, and they have, they're all tuned for highly deliverable emails that aren't going to get caught by spam filters, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
2 is, and I don't know about constant contact, but I use one called Gist, G-I-S-T.
Great.
And with Gist, Gist can get very, very sophisticated. Mm-hmm. So Gist can get to the point where you have multiple workflows, and you say, okay, if someone was first exposed to me in person, send them this stream of things, and then ask them this thing, and then detect if they visited my website, and if they looked at these 3 pages, send them these emails. Or you can do it for something as simple as, I'm just going to get on and send out a broadcast email once in a while, or create a campaign, that everyone who goes to my website and clicks start, it's going to send them the following 30 messages over the next 60 days to introduce them to me and my work. And, it's the autoresponder madness sequence. So it's potentially a lot more sophisticated than you need on one hand. On the other hand, you can use it pretty simply. And if there's no significant price difference, you may as well go with something that can arbitrarily scale for the next 10 years as opposed to, but just a sec, I'm just going to take a quick look to see what the price differences are for these. Because I find I just think all of them are ridiculously expensive. And Constant Contact doesn't actually tell you what their prices are. They just say that it's based on the number of contacts.
Oh. And I again, I tossed that out because it's the name that I know, not for any particular reason.
Right. Well, it's the one that I think of as being as being kind of the beginners, the low end. Interestingly enough, it was started by a friend of mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So whenever I hear about, I've never used it, but whenever I hear about Constant Contact, I'm like, oh, that's Randy Park's company. He doesn't work there anymore. He made his millions and got out of it. But okay, so the answer is I don't actually know how much they cost, because you can't really quite find out. All you can find out is they are affordable plans built for you. So Gist, which is the one that I use, and I have an affiliate link, which if you were to decide to do it, I would say do it. But the most important thing is to do something that makes sense for you financially. So Gist is free for up to 500 contacts. And then once you're up to like 1,000 contacts, let's see. So $50, this is per month. So it's $50 a month for 2,500 contacts. It's free for 500, $25 for 1,000, $50 for 2,500. And if you start getting up, like I have over 10,000 on my list, so mine would be, oh, interesting. They're tiered. It's not just okay. So mine would basically end up being about $160 a month.
Okay.
For 13,000 contacts, which actually is pretty good relative to some of the other ones I've used. As I'm looking at that, because the last one I used was $300 a month for the same number of contacts. So this is literally half the price.
Okay.
So anyway, so Gist, and that's getgist.com. And like I said, if you were to decide to look into that, since you can do the first 500 for free, it's worth trying it, because with 500 is also not a high stakes thing, right? It'll be easy to move somewhere else if you decide that it doesn't work for you.
I trust that it will be easy for someone else to move from one location to another if I ask them politely.
Yeah, yes.
I do know my weaknesses, and this is certainly among them.
Got it.
That's great. I love the idea of trying to turn, so the sales emails bit, I've never been good at sales. Maybe someday I will have someone working on my team who is good at sales, and that will be great. And he or she or they can handle that. For now, I love the idea of just continuing the story and using something like a nurturing type campaign to extend the story of the show that I'm trying to do out through the rest of the month in some way, and showing some of the ideas that didn't work and sharing a trick or two that isn't going to make it into the show for whatever reason.
Oh yeah. If you make us part of your development process, you better believe we're going to want to come see the show.
Right.
Here's a trick I'm trying, and what do you think? How should I change this? This is, because remember, only a small number of people are actually going to go and engage at that level,
right.
But the ones who are, interestingly enough, even though they've already seen the trick potentially and like whatever, they're probably going to want to come see the finished thing, because they're like, and the other thing too is is in sending out emails. I guess videos are becoming more popular, although that's a double-edged sword. I personally am a reader,
Yeah.
and so I would watch a 5-minute video if it were somebody that I liked who was going to show me something cool. But if what I'm after is information, for example, give it to me in writing because I can speed read. And if you
Hmm.
give it to me on video, I have to sit through, whatever the video maker. But but again, I'm not necessarily representative of your average audience member, right? The average person may actually love, 3-minute videos or 10-minute videos. And if you had a whole series of videos, the nice thing about these are evergreen.
Hmm.
So, if you just create a little YouTube channel, which is, Evan's, and I'm just going to continue with the theme of come into Evan's magical
Yeah.
world, you know, come hang out with Evan in his magical world behind the scenes, and um, and you put it up as a YouTube channel so people can watch it as a channel, but when you post a video, put it in your newsletter or put a link to it and send out take a screenshot, put the screenshot in the newsletter, and then make it be a link to the video itself, and just say, hey, in this week's video, I'm working on the Alice in Wonder. Someone said Alice in Wonderland was a thing, so I was thinking giant caterpillar, and here was the trick I was thinking of, which I've decided not to include, but let me share it with you if you're interested. Or let me, or do you have any ideas? Because that's the other thing too, is if you're inviting us into your world, interactivity and interaction, even if it's not, even if it's separated in time and space. So, you pose a question in the newsletter and we can email you answers, or if you have a web page or something, I would shy away from doing anything that has to do with public conversation at this point, just because I find that there is nothing more discouraging than an empty message board, an empty public message board that has 3 people talking on it and no one else.
Yeah.
Um, you want to wait till you have a critical mass before doing something where people are going to show up and see other people's conversation and so on.
And how important do you think it is to? I tend to get overwhelmed by the sheer number of possible streams of communication out there. I have heard everything from you have to be on everything, even just toss a profile up, to just pick one and stick with that one and do it really well. I'm sure there's no hard and fast guidance, but like any one of I can I'm one of my values is trying to find like the right contextual moment or the right contextual vehicle for whatever magic I'm doing. So I could see situations where a quick video being sent out for storytelling. I could imagine a sort of blog post style, whatever it may be, or just a interpersonal email, text based, whatever it is, or even some pictures of something. I could see that being an interesting change. Is there a a particular social media stream or a combination of them, or any sort of guidance on how to reach out to people, someone who is
um,
wildly indecisive?
no.
Great.
um,
That's easy.
the main thing that I've heard is, yeah, you can try to be on everything, but realistically, you only have so many hours in a day, and this is not going to be paid time for you, at least not
Yeah.
until you have enough fans that you can sell advertising or something
Yeah.
like that. So, choose one that you think the widest audience can be brought to, invest in that for 6 months, and then see how it's going. And
Okay.
if people aren't responding, try a different one. Or, try a whole bunch of them at once, but like quickly hone in on the one that gives you the biggest bang for your buck. So if Instagram is where the kids are and you think they're going to be the primary audience for your show, then go for Instagram. If it's about short little movies, I don't know if Snapchat has the social media thing, but I know that they have sponsored videos and things these days. Yeah. I don't know. What all these things are.
Hmm.
I tend to just stick with my newsletter list. I've never done a whole lot of social media stuff, although I'm thinking about doing some YouTube videos. Um, Mainly because I like video as a medium, although it's a lot of effort to produce if you wanted to have even remotely professional production values, which I don't. I mean, I'm not going to put that effort in unless I see that there's some actual return, potential return there.
That's the, I mean, that if I had to choose one immediately, I would go to YouTube videos. But man, it is overwhelming for someone who photography video is not my strength at all.
Right.
Trying to manage that skill set on
Well,
one's own or pay for someone to do it well is a big investment.
right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this recording up as is. I'm not going
Mhm.
to edit it. It's just going to go up and boom. The main skill set that you would have to develop to do a spontaneous video like this is the ability to talk without saying and which you already have and I already have. So people watching this are thinking, wow, these guys are professional. How do they read that script so smoothly? And the answer is every time you think you're about to say just go, yes. There must have been a frog in my throat.
That was it.
And I then said as soon as I finished.
All right, delete the video. Where's back?
Exactly.
Where's rewind on
We
this?
have to start over again. So let's move back an hour and 50. Wow, an hour and 15 minutes. We've been going for a while.
Wow.
So in terms of which one to start with, wherever your people currently are, you may as well try that one. Some people do Facebook groups as well.
Mm-hmm.
I am personally opposed to Facebook because I'm trying to diminish the number of people on it rather than increase the number of people on it. However, if that's where you're going to do business and you actually have evidence that it's reaching people and resulting in business, you know, like it or not, part of the reason they're so big and effective is because they have monopoly power in social media. So you may choose to go with them, but take a look at how often the interaction is, whether it's one-way or two-way interaction. I know people who do things like they'll post on Instagram and Twitter. There's a website called buffer.com, where you can queue up a whole bunch of posts and schedule them to go out, and they'll just go out.
Yep.
So I know people who do things like once a week, they sit down and they fill up their buffer queue with posts, and then they don't think about it again for a week or for 2 weeks or for a month. They then may go to their different websites. So they may go to Twitter once a day. They know when they're doing it, 4 o'clock to 4:10, and they respond to whatever they want to respond to. The trick is treating social media presence like part of your business, not like a social thing. So you want to be very rigorous with how you use your time and not use too much, and pay attention to how much love in the form of dollars or the form of community engagement or the form of publicity, how much it's actually getting you. And if it's not giving you a decent return on your time and money invested, leave it. The advantage to something like YouTube is that once you put something up there, it's up there forever, and people who discover your channel can watch it. I mean, I haven't added a video to my YouTube channel, I think, in like 10 years. But I do have it linked to off the front page of my website. And people probably a few times a year, people write in and say, hey, I just watched your video about XYZ. You know, that's really great. Why, you know, and I'm like, great. I mean, I put that video up in 2004, which is fine.
Evergreen.
You know, hang on a second. I'm seeing if I can. I don't even know the name of my channel. I think it's youtube.com/c/SteverRobbins1, but we will find out. Oh, maybe it's Get It Done Guy.
I think that's right, because I think I saw one of your a video at one point that popped up.
Well, anyway, yeah. If you go to youtube.com/Get It Done Guy, that takes you to my page.
So cool.
And I think, and if you look under channels, I don't actually have a channel at this point. I don't have any channels.
Oh yeah.
Huh. It does show subscriptions, however. Do you have? That's weird. I don't understand what I'm looking at here. I'm trying to figure out, is this actually telling the world who I'm subscribed to? I'm not subscribed to anyone questionable, but if that's in fact what this is doing, it's nice to know in advance that if I ever do want to subscribe to questionable, it's going to become public knowledge. Yeah, wow, that's really interesting. Okay, so if you go to Get It Done Guy and you click on channels, it shows you who I am subscribed to, and it gives you the option to subscribe to the same things.
And there's Danny. Was it Danny Gonzalez?
Yeah, there's that. Oh my God, he's up to 3.2 million subscribers. When I first subscribed to him, he was at like 700,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he very impressive. He's done a fabulous job of promoting himself. And again, what he does is pure entertainment. It's not, he's not an informational podcaster. He's purely entertaining. He has
I'm down for that.
I would say he has a distinctive editing style. He has an editing style that might be standard for everyone under the age of 25. I don't
Yep.
know. I'm not, don't hang out with that demographic, but
Yeah,
very choppy.
the kids nowadays.
It's true. Well, the problem, it was funny. He actually had an episode about the kids nowadays. And
Oh,
it was
really?
him at the age of like 22 going, let's see what the 18-year-olds are up to. And I'm like, a generation has now shrunk to 4 years.
I look forward to that recurring segment on his show where every 4 years he goes back and meta-analyzes his analysis, his commentary on his younger self.
Exactly. So anyway, so the things that I would recommend is get yourself a real email processing system, whether it's Constant Contact or this one I use that's Gist. I'll send you the affiliate link.
I'll give that one a try for sure.
Yeah. And I will also send you information about Autoresponder Madness.
Yeah.
So that you can subscribe to that to get some idea, and you can subscribe to version 2 for free.
Mm-hmm.
At least I think that I can refer a third party to that. But, the guy who runs it is a friend of mine. I'll beg him if this wasn't intended as a universal free offer, I'll beg him to comp you in.
Appreciate it.
And yeah, and then we can talk at a later date. So I hope this has been helpful.
It has been marvelous. It has been really, really helpful. Thank you. I was looking forward to the kind of business eye on things, but something that I'm realizing the more I talk to not to say you are not, but non-theatrical, non-magic folk is it has been enlightening to hear their opinions and thoughts on the magic and the type of stuff that I do, and this sort of revelatory moment of world building, which is such a big part of the online world and just kind of the theatrical world in general nowadays. That a magical take on world building is an interesting slant. So thank you for both the business ideas and for the creative ideas.
And I'm also going to push on that a little bit more, because you're still framing it in terms of the world building.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it in terms of us getting to know Evan.
Okay.
Because I think too many people, I mean, again, that for you, I think, is a gift. There are plenty of people who I don't want to know them. I just want to see their act. But in your case, that worked so well in all 3 of the shows. And people remarked on that. Like that's one of the things you bring to I mean, you also are a fabulous illusionist, or mentalist, or both, or I don't know what it is you do. I don't know. I don't know all the lingo, but whatever the lingo is, you're really good at it. But the thing that makes you a compelling performer is not just that you're good at it, because honestly, I can go to YouTube and see people who are good at it.
Right.
It's that you're Evan, and you are this eager, excited, giant puppy dog who says, come read my children's books with me. And we're like, okay. Like, wow, green eggs and ham? Oh, how come that egg is white? Oh, wow, you turned it green. How did that happen? Like coming into Evan's head is I think a big differentiator, because I have not seen dozens and dozens of magic shows, but I've probably seen 10 to 15 different professional shows over the course of my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Which on one hand isn't that many. On the other hand, if we're talking about 10 to 15 different people,
that's
none of them have had that approach.
That is a good sample of magic shows for sure.
The reason Ellen DeGeneres is so popular, and the reason Oprah is so popular, is people feel like they know them, the person. It's not Ellen is always going to talk about the topics I'm interested in. It's that I can trust Ellen. I can come in and sit down in her living room with her, and I can trust that she will be entertaining, and that she will, I can trust that Oprah will introduce me to some new interesting self-help person, and she cares about me and where I'm going. So you can be the male equivalent of Ellen and Oprah. So Hide a top hat under everyone's seat, and 3 of the top hats, if you reach in, there's a new convertible in them.
That'll. I think we might have to revisit the numbers from the first part of this, but yes.
All right. I hope this has been helpful.
Cool. This has been great. Thank you, Steve.
And,
I appreciate it.
I'll send you a link to the recording.
Please do.
Right.
I have to run. As to you, I'm going to go type these up before I forget them because these are invaluable notes. And I will talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.